today's story. Jonathan Miller's weathered hands gripped the steering wheel of his truck as he pulled into the construction site. The gleaming steel beams of his latest project, a 15-story office complex in downtown Boston, stretched toward the sky. 20 years ago, he'd been operating that single pickup truck alone, taking whatever renovation jobs he could find. Now, the Miller Construction logo adorned dozens of vehicles and hard hats across the city. At 45, Jonathan carried himself with the commanding presence of someone who'd built his empire through sheer force of will. His 6'2" frame remained as solid as the foundations he laid, though his right knee occasionally protested with a slight limp, a reminder of a scaffold collapse in his early days. "Morning, boss," called out Pete Rodriguez, his site foreman of 12 years. "The concrete guys are saying they need another week on the foundation." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "They got 3 days. Tell them I'll be personally inspecting their work, and if it's not up to spec, they won't see a dime." "But sir, they're claiming." 3 days, Pete. "I didn't build this company by accepting excuses." Pete nodded quickly, already pulling out his phone. He'd seen that look in Jonathan's eyes before. It was the same one that had secured them the Pierce Tower contract when everyone said it was impossible to complete in the proposed time frame. Jonathan had driven his crews hard, but he'd worked alongside them, and they'd finished 2 days early. Later that morning, Jonathan sat in his office, reviewing bid proposals when his wife Heather breezed in. She wore a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than his first truck, her blonde hair styled perfectly despite the humid September weather. "Surprise." She placed a coffee on his desk. "I was showing a property down the street and thought I'd stop by." Jonathan looked up, his stern expression softening slightly. "You haven't brought me coffee since those condo renovations where we met. Can't a wife spoil her husband occasionally?" Heather perched on the edge of his desk, an action that would have earned anyone else a sharp rebuke. "Speaking of those days, remember how nervous you were asking me to handle the sales?" "Nervous?" "I was terrified. Single biggest contract I'd had, and I was trusting it to the prettiest real estate agent in Boston, and I sold every unit within 3 months," Heather reminded him, a hint of pride in her voice. "We made quite the team." "Still do." Jonathan reached for her hand, his calloused fingers contrasting with her manicured ones. "How's the Apex development listings going?" Something flickered across Heather's face, but her smile remained steady. "Ryan and Daniel are ambitious. They're pushing hard to expand their portfolio." "Ryan and Daniel now, is it? Not the Thompson brothers anymore?" "We work closely, John. It's natural to be on first-name basis with clients." She stood, smoothing her skirt. "Speaking of which, I have a showing in 30 minutes. Oh, and don't forget, Ashley wants to talk about her BU plans over dinner tonight." Jonathan nodded, already turning back to his paperwork. "I'll be home by 7. Make it 6:30. She's excited about this." Heather leaned down to kiss his cheek, her expensive perfume lingering after she left. The afternoon brought Michael Foster, his best friend since their days throwing rocks at trains in South Boston. Now a detective with Boston PD's white-collar crimes unit, Michael still carried himself with the same street-smart alertness that had kept them both out of serious trouble in their youth. "Your concrete suppliers are clean," Michael said without preamble, dropping into the chair across from Jonathan. "Ran them through every database we have. No connections to organized crime, no history of kickbacks." Jonathan pushed aside the bid documents. "Someone's undercutting us, Mike. 3rd contract this month we've lost to Apex, even though our numbers were lower." "The Thompson brothers?" Michael's eyes narrowed. "They've come up in a few conversations at the precinct, but nothing solid. Everything about them feels wrong. They appeared out of nowhere 2 years ago with deep pockets and deeper connections. Now they're winning bids before we even submit our numbers. Want me to dig deeper?" Jonathan shook his head. "Not yet. Could be I'm just being paranoid because Heather's handling their properties." "How's that going? Heather selling for the competition?" "She says it's just business." Jonathan's tone made it clear he wasn't entirely convinced. "Been a lot of late meetings lately. Client dinners, networking events." Michael leaned forward. "You want me to?" "No." Jonathan cut him off sharply. "She's my wife, Mike. 20 years of marriage means something." 20 years is a lot to throw away, Michael agreed carefully, but it's also a lot to take for granted. Their conversation was interrupted by Linda Martinez, Jonathan's office manager. She'd been with him for 15 years, starting as a part-time receptionist and working her way up to running the administrative side of the business. Mr. Miller, sorry to interrupt, but the Henderson bid results just came in. Linda's expression told him everything he needed to know. Apex underbid us by exactly 2%. Jonathan's fist came down hard on his desk. 2%? That's impossible. Nobody could estimate that close unless they knew our number, Michael finished. Linda hesitated, then pulled out a folder. There's something else. I've been tracking our lost bids against Heather's networking events. There's a pattern. Jonathan held up his hand. I don't want to hear it. Boss, you need to. I said no, Linda. His voice carried the same authority that had built his company from nothing. Thank you for your concern, but my marriage is not up for discussion. After they left, Jonathan stared at the photo on his desk. Him, Heather, and Ashley at their daughter's high school graduation last year. Ashley had his height but Heather's delicate features. She'd been accepted to Boston University's construction management program, planning to follow in his footsteps. His legacy. The intercom buzzed. Mr. Miller? The concrete crew foreman is here about the deadline. Jonathan straightened, pushing personal concerns aside. He had an empire to run, and he hadn't built it by being soft. Send him in, he growled, ready to remind everyone why Miller Construction's reputation for excellence was built on more than just competitive pricing. The changes were subtle at first, like hairline cracks in fresh concrete. Heather's designer wardrobe had always been expensive, but lately, her purchases had become extravagant. The new Mercedes she brought home one Tuesday afternoon sat in their driveway like a gleaming accusation. It was time for an upgrade, she'd explained, twirling the keys. The commission from the Riverside development came in. You always said I should reward myself for big wins. Jonathan stood in the garage, studying the vehicle's sleek lines. Riverside? That's an Apex property. One of their biggest projects yet. Ryan thinks, she caught herself. The Thompson brothers think it could reshape that whole neighborhood. Ryan thinks a lot of things, Jonathan said, his voice carefully neutral. He seemed to think about you quite often these days. Heather's laugh held a nervous edge. Don't be ridiculous, John. It's purely professional. Besides, he's married to Sandra, remember? We had them over for dinner last month. Right. Sandra. The one who spent the whole evening on her phone while her husband couldn't take his eyes off you. Are you jealous? Heather stepped closer, running her hand down his arm. After 20 years? Jonathan caught her wrist, his grip firm but not painful. Jealous? No. Concerned about my wife spending so much time with the competition? Maybe. They're not the competition, Heather pulled away. They're clients. Important ones. And these networking events are crucial for building relationships. Relationships, Jonathan repeated. Like the one you're building with Ryan Thompson? Don't. Heather's tone turned sharp. Don't you dare question my loyalty. I've been by your side since you were nothing but a guy with a truck and big dreams. And now? Now you're successful. Respected. Everything you wanted to be. She softened her voice. Everything we worked for together. The conversation was interrupted by Ashley bounding into the garage, her long dark hair swinging. Mom, Dad, look what came. She waved a thick envelope bearing the Boston University logo. Jonathan watched his wife's expression shift seamlessly into proud mother mode. The tension of moments before vanished as if it had never existed. Your housing assignment? Heather asked, all attention now on their daughter. Better. I got into the honors program for construction management. Ashley's excitement was palpable. Professor Williams said my application was one of the strongest they'd seen. He specifically mentioned my internship experience with Apex last summer. Jonathan's head snapped up. Apex? You interned with Apex? Oh. Ashley's enthusiasm dimmed slightly. I thought Mom told you. It was such a great opportunity, and Ryan. Mr. Thompson said it would look amazing on my college applications. Your mother and Mr. Thompson arranged this without consulting me? Dad, don't be mad, Ashley pleaded. It was just filing and basic office work. but I learned so much about how a modern construction company operates. Modern? Jonathan's voice carried an edge that made both women tense. As opposed to what? That's not what she meant, Heather cut in quickly. Ashley, honey, why don't you go call your friends and share the good news? Your father and I need to talk. Once Ashley was gone, Jonathan turned to his wife. You put our daughter to work for my competitors without telling me? It was an opportunity. Heather's chin lifted defiantly, one that clearly paid off. Or would you rather she learn the business from your foreman and concrete suppliers? Those foremen and suppliers built this family's future, built the life you seem so eager to distance yourself from lately. Distance myself? Heather laughed bitterly. I'm trying to ensure our daughter has every advantage. The construction industry is changing, Jonathan. It's not all handshakes and hard hats anymore. No, apparently it's networking events and secret internships now. They weren't secret. You were just too busy with your precious job sites to notice what was happening in your own home. The words hung between them, heavy with implications neither was ready to voice. Finally, Jonathan spoke, his tone controlled. I have a site inspection. Don't wait up. He spent the next few hours walking the Pierce Tower project, checking every weld, every joint, every detail that had made Miller Construction synonymous with quality. The workers gave him a wide berth, recognizing the dangerous glint in their boss's eyes. Linda found him there as the sun was setting, clipboard in hand and concern on her face. Boss, we need to talk about the Henderson contract. I told you. This isn't about your wife, Linda interrupted, earning a sharp look that would have cowed most employees. But Linda had earned the right to speak freely. This is about the numbers. I've been reviewing all our lost bids from the past year. The pattern isn't just suspicious anymore. It's impossible. She handed him a spreadsheet. Every contract we've lost to Apex has been underbid by 1 to 3%. Not 5%, not 10%. Just enough to win, but not enough to raise red flags. Jonathan studied the numbers, his expression darkening. They'd need to know our exact bids to manage this level of precision. Yes, Linda said quietly. They would. The implications hung in the air like dust from a demolition site. Jonathan folded the paper carefully and placed it in his pocket. Thank you, Linda. That will be all. Mr. Miller. She hesitated. Jonathan, whatever you're thinking of doing, be careful. The Thompson brothers. They have connections we don't understand. He gave her a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Go home, Linda. Kiss your kids. Some storms are better watched from a distance. After she left, Jonathan pulled out his phone and dialed a familiar number. Mike, remember when you offered to dig deeper? I think it's time. The damp weather had Jonathan's knee screaming by late afternoon. He'd spent the morning inspecting the foundation work at the Pierce Tower site, getting down into the trenches himself to verify the concrete mix and rebar placement. His crews had watched with a mixture of respect and fear as he'd pointed out 3 violations that would have compromised the entire structure. Fix it, he'd ordered, his voice carrying across the site. Tear it out and start over if you have to, but it gets done right. The foreman had started to protest about costs and delays, but one look at Jonathan's expression had silenced him. Everyone knew the stories about contractors who tried to cut corners on Miller construction projects. None of them worked in Boston anymore. Now, driving home earlier than usual, Jonathan replayed his conversation with Linda. The spreadsheet felt like it was burning a hole in his pocket, each number a nail in a coffin he wasn't ready to open. He pulled into his driveway, noticing Heather's new Mercedes was missing. Another networking event, no doubt. The house was quiet as he entered, but voices drifted down from upstairs. Ashley's room. He recognized Heather's laugh, then paused. She was supposed to be at a client meeting. Jonathan moved silently up the stairs, years of job site inspections having taught him which floorboards would betray his presence. The door to Ashley's room was partially open, warm light spilling into the hallway. I can't believe he didn't even question the internship, Ashley's voice carried clearly. God, he's so stupid. Your father sees what he wants to see, Heather replied, amusement evident in her tone. Remember when he actually believed I was taking tennis lessons last summer? You mean when you were really at Ryan's beach house? Ashley's giggle held a cruel edge that made Jonathan's fists clench. Mom, you're so bad. Ryan appreciates a real woman. Your father's just a pathetic doormat who can't satisfy a real woman. Heather's voice dripped with contempt. He still thinks I'm his perfect wife, helping him build his precious company, while you're actually helping tear it down. Ashley sounded proud. Those bid numbers I got from his computer last week? Ryan said they were exactly what he needed. You're learning fast, baby. Just like your real father. Jonathan's world tilted on its axis. The spreadsheet in his pocket suddenly felt irrelevant compared to this new revelation. His daughter, no, not his daughter, was actively participating in destroying everything he'd built. That's why Mom needs 5 boyfriends. Ashley's voice continued, oblivious to the storm gathering in the hallway. He's a real loser, and it's embarrassing to call him Dad. Well, you won't have to call him that much longer, Heather said. Once Apex takes over Miller Construction's major contracts, Ryan's lawyers will handle the divorce. Your trust fund is already set up. Will we move in with Ryan and Aunt Sandra? Sandra won't be in the picture much longer either, sweetie. She serves her purpose for now, hosting those charity events where we meet potential targets. But Ryan and I have bigger plans. Jonathan had heard enough. His mind catalyzed years of small doubts into crystalline clarity. The late-night calls, the mysterious meetings, the lost contracts. It wasn't just an affair or corporate espionage. It was a calculated, systematic betrayal by the 2 people he'd trusted most in the world. He moved away from the door as silently as he'd approached, his military training from years ago serving him well. In his study, he opened his safe and removed 2 USB drives and a folder of documents he'd been gathering. Paranoid, Heather had called him. Untrusting. Now he knew why she'd worked so hard to make him doubt his instincts. His phone buzzed, a text from Michael. Found something big. Meet tonight? Jonathan typed back a single word. Tonight. He heard movement upstairs, Heather and Ashley's voices growing louder as they descended the stairs. He quickly accessed his computer, initiating the program he'd had written months ago when the first suspicions began. In seconds, every file was encrypted, every password changed. Let them try to access his data now. John? Heather's voice called out. You're home early. He took a deep breath, straightened his shoulders, and opened the study door. The man who walked out was not the same one who'd entered the house an hour ago. That man had been concerned, suspicious, but still clinging to hope. This man had ice in his veins and vengeance in his heart. Traffic was light, he replied evenly, watching their faces. Both showed perfect smiles, perfect concern, perfect lies. How was your client meeting? Canceled at the last minute, Heather said smoothly. I was just helping Ashley with her college planning. College planning, Jonathan repeated. Yes, I suppose that's very important. Making sure everything's in place for the future. Dad, are you okay? Ashley stepped forward, concern in her eyes. The same eyes that had just gleamed with mockery minutes ago. You look tired. I'm fine, he answered, his voice carrying no hint of the rage and betrayal churning beneath the surface. Just thinking about foundations. Foundations? Heather's perfectly manicured eyebrow rose. Yes, Jonathan smiled, and if they'd known him better, known him at all, they would have recognized the danger in that expression. About how even the strongest structure can collapse if what it's built on isn't true. He turned and walked away, leaving them exchanging glances in the hallway. In his pocket, his phone buzzed again. Another text from Michael, bringing Rachel Torres. You're going to want to hear what she found. Jonathan sent back a thumbs-up emoji, the casual response masking the fury and determination coursing through him. They thought he was a doormat? A loser? He would show them exactly why Miller Construction's reputation was built on more than just quality work. It was built on Jonathan Miller's absolute refusal to accept betrayal or failure. The perfect lie was about to crumble, and he would make sure everyone involved went down with it. Jonathan sat across from Michael at their usual corner table in O'Malley's bar, his fingers wrapped around a glass of scotch he hadn't touched. The usual evening crowd provided perfect cover for private conversation. You better have a damn good reason for bringing an outsider into this, Jonathan growled, studying the woman seated beside Michael. Rachel Torres didn't flinch under his scrutiny. Her dark eyes met his steadily, professional, and sharp. "Mr. Miller, I specialize in corporate espionage cases. Detective Foster called me because your situation matches a pattern I've been tracking." "What pattern?" "Successful construction companies targeted through personal relationships. Bid information leaked. Contracts lost." Rachel pulled out a tablet. "In the past 3 years, I've documented 6 cases across New England. The companies all had something in common. They were undercut by Apex developments." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "And the personal relationships?" "Usually the wife," Rachel said bluntly. "Sometimes a key employee. Always someone with access to confidential information. The Thompson brothers are experts at exploiting vulnerabilities." "I don't have vulnerabilities," Jonathan snapped. Michael leaned forward. "John, remember that subcontractor last year who tried to substitute inferior steel on the Madison project? What did you do?" "I blacklisted him from every major construction project in Boston." "Exactly. Because nobody screws with Jonathan Miller's business." Michael's voice softened slightly. "But this isn't just business anymore, is it?" Jonathan finally took a drink, the scotch burning less than the truth. "No, it's not. Something about your wife's story never sat right with me," Michael admitted. "The timing of her involvement with Apex, the sudden lifestyle changes. Let us help you uncover what's really happening." Rachel pulled out several photographs. These were taken at various networking events over the past 6 months. "Notice anything interesting?" Jonathan examined the images. They showed elegant charity galas and business functions. In each one, he spotted Heather, dressed to kill, talking closely with Ryan Thompson. Sandra Thompson, Ryan's wife, appeared in several photos but always seemed distracted, often on her phone. "The events are legitimate," Rachel explained. "High-profile charity fundraisers, business association meetings. Perfect cover for exchanging information. Mrs. Thompson organizes most of them through her social connections. And my wife, always seated at Thompson's table, always leaving within 10 minutes of him. Different cars, different directions, but ending up at the same destinations." Rachel's tone remained professional. "Would you like to know where?" Jonathan's knuckles whitened around his glass. "Tell me everything." Over the next hour, Rachel laid out her preliminary findings. Bank statements showing unexplained deposits to Heather's personal account. Phone records revealing patterns of calls and texts. Surveillance photos documenting meetings that had nothing to do with real estate. "The networking events are just the surface," Rachel concluded. "They're running a sophisticated operation. Your wife isn't just sleeping with Ryan Thompson. She's part of their scheme." "The commission bonuses she claimed? They're coming from multiple accounts. Payments for inside information about Miller Construction's bids." Michael produced a stack of documents. "We pulled files on other cases involving Apex. They always follow the same playbook. Identify a successful target, insert someone close to the owner, gather intel, then systematically destroy the business. Why not just compete legitimately?" Jonathan demanded. Rachel's laugh held no humor. "Because Ryan Thompson isn't a builder, Mr. Miller. He's a corporate raider with a construction company facade. He doesn't want to compete. He wants to acquire. By driving down your stock value and reputation, he can buy Miller Construction for pennies on the dollar." Jonathan stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "I need names. Everyone involved. Every detail of their operation. Every cent they've stolen." "Already working on it," Rachel assured him. "I have contacts in banking, real estate, construction. Give me 2 weeks, and I'll have enough evidence to bury them." "1 week," Jonathan countered. "And I want updates daily." Michael grabbed his arm as he turned to leave. "John, wait. There's something else you need to know." "Something about Ashley." Jonathan froze. "What about her?" "The internship at Apex last summer? It wasn't filing and office work." Michael looked pained. "She had access to your company's computer systems. We think she might have been gathering information." Jonathan finished, his voice deadly quiet. "My own daughter. Spying for them." Rachel cleared her throat. "Mr. Miller, in cases like this, we often find that family betrayal goes deeper than initially suspected. Would you be willing to run every test?" Jonathan cut her off. "DNA, financial records, everything. I want to know exactly what I'm dealing with. As he strode out of the bar, Michael called after him. What are you going to do? Jonathan didn't turn around. I'm going to do what I do best, Mike. I'm going to tear down everything they've built. And when I'm done, there won't be enough left to rebuild. The next week passed in a blur of revelations, each one driving the knife deeper. Jonathan maintained his routine, running job sites, attending meetings, even enduring Sunday dinner with his family. But behind the facade, an investigation was unfolding that would shatter his world forever. Mark Wilson, his bank manager of 15 years, requested an urgent meeting on Tuesday morning. The man's usual jovial demeanor was replaced by grim professionalism as he laid out a series of documents. I started looking into those loan applications you asked about, Mark began. Jonathan, these signatures, they're forgeries. Good ones, but definitely not yours. Jonathan examined the paperwork. Home equity loans, business lines of credit, all bearing his supposed authorization. How much? Almost $2 million. The funds were transferred to offshore accounts within hours of approval. Mark shuffled through more papers. The applications came through legitimate channels. Everything looked proper. Heather's reputation in real estate gave her credibility. No one questioned her having power of attorney, except she doesn't have power of attorney. No, she doesn't. Mark pulled out one final document. This is the most recent attempt. A loan application for $5 million against Miller Construction's assets. It came in yesterday. Jonathan's expression hardened. Deny it. Freeze everything. I want a complete audit of every account, every transaction. Already done. But Jonathan, there's more. The offshore accounts? They're linked to property investments with the Thompson brothers. High-end developments, luxury condos. Your wife and Ryan Thompson are listed as primary stakeholders. Along with my daughter? Jonathan's voice carried a dangerous edge. Mark nodded reluctantly. Ashley's name appears on several trust documents. Substantial sums designated for her education and future inheritance. Jonathan stood, his decision made. I need copies of everything. And Mark? Not a word to anyone about this conversation. Of course. But what are you going to do about the police? Let me worry about that. Jonathan's smile would have made a shark uncomfortable. I have other matters to attend to first. Those matters led him to a modest medical clinic in South Boston later that afternoon. Dr. David Chun had owed him a favor since Jonathan saved his renovation project after a devastating flood. Now it was time to collect. The DNA test results are conclusive, Dr. Chun explained, avoiding Jonathan's gaze. The probability of paternity is 0%. I ran it twice to be sure. Jonathan stared at the report, memories flooding back. Ashley's dark hair, so different from his blonde waves. Her delicate features that never quite matched his strong jaw. All the little doubts he'd dismissed over the years, trusting his wife's explanations. When can you get me certified copies? Jonathan, David hesitated. These results, they could destroy your family. My family was destroyed long ago, Jonathan replied coldly. I just didn't know it yet. He spent the afternoon in his office, reviewing everything Rachel Torres had uncovered. Ashley's involvement went far beyond harsh words or teenage rebellion. She'd been accessing his computer system since she was 16, harvesting data about bids, contracts, and client lists. The timestamps matched perfectly with Miller Construction's lost contracts. Linda Martinez knocked on his door around 6, her face pale. Boss? You need to see this. She played a security video from the previous week. It showed Ashley entering the office late at night, using Heather's access card. The timestamp matched the latest stolen bid information. There's more, Linda continued. That donation to Boston University's construction management program? It came from Ryan Thompson. $2 million, earmarked specifically for special admissions considerations. Jonathan's laugh held no humor. So even her college acceptance was part of their scheme. What do you want me to do? Nothing. Jonathan's voice was ice. Continue gathering evidence. Document everything. But don't let them suspect we know. That evening, he sat in his study, surrounded by proof of 2 decades of lies. His phone buzzed, Rachel Torres with another update. Mr. Miller? We found something big. The scheme goes beyond just your company. Sandra Thompson, she's been running this operation for years. Multiple construction companies, all targeted the same way. And Ashley, she's not just following orders. She's been actively involved in planning their next targets. Jonathan absorbed this information with deadly calm. Send me everything you have. And Rachel? Tell Michael it's time to move this to the next level. He opened his safe, adding the DNA results to his growing collection of evidence. Soon, very soon, they would all learn exactly what happened to people who betrayed Jonathan Miller. Rachel Torres sat in her office, surrounded by walls of evidence that painted a picture of betrayal more complex than even she had imagined. After 2 weeks of investigation, the true scope of the operation left her professionally impressed and personally disgusted. "Walk me through it again," Jonathan demanded, his imposing frame making her spacious office feel cramped. Every detail. Rachel pulled up a complex diagram on her computer. Sandra Thompson is the architect of the entire operation. While everyone focused on Ryan and Daniel's construction dealings, she was the one identifying targets and orchestrating the infiltration. Through my wife. Heather was one of their most successful operators. Rachel clicked through surveillance photos. She'd meet potential targets at Sandra's charity events, assess their vulnerabilities. If the company looked promising, she'd make introductions to Ryan. Meanwhile, Sandra would orchestrate seemingly chance encounters with other wives, building a social network that doubled as an intelligence-gathering operation. Michael Foster leaned forward from his chair by the window. The genius is in the legitimacy. Every meeting, every event, every transaction. They all have plausible business explanations. Until you look deeper, Rachel continued. Take those charity galas Sandra organizes. Perfect cover for transferring information and payments. We've tracked over 30 successful builders who lost everything after their wives or key employees attended these events. Jonathan's expression remained stone. And Ashley? Rachel hesitated, then pulled up another file. Your daughter. She's not just a victim of her mother's lies. She's been an active participant since she was 16. Those college touring trips? Cover for meetings with other targets' children. She helps recruit them, shows them how to access their parents' business information. She learned from the best, Michael added quietly. Ryan Thompson isn't just her biological father. He's been grooming her for years to take over the operation eventually. Jonathan stood, pacing the office. The Thompson brothers get the construction assets, Sandra runs the social operation, and my wife and daughter help destroy families for profit. It's a perfect system, Rachel admitted. The victims are too embarrassed to come forward. Who wants to admit their wife and child betrayed them? The few who tried to fight back found themselves facing ruthless lawyers and mysteriously vanishing evidence. But you have proof? Rachel nodded grimly. Ironclad. Bank records showing payments to Heather through multiple shell companies. Surveillance footage of information exchanges. Communications between Ashley and Ryan discussing target selection. The BU donation was just the tip of the iceberg. They've been financing her entire lifestyle through offshore accounts. The construction management program was never the goal, Michael added. It was about building credibility for future operations. Ashley's role was to demonstrate how children of successful builders could be turned against their fathers. Jonathan absorbed this information with terrifying calm. How many other families? Rachel pulled up a spreadsheet. We've identified 27 cases in the past 5 years, all following the same pattern. Wife begins attending Sandra's events, daughter or son gets involved with Apex through internships or mentoring, construction company starts losing bids, financial irregularities emerge, and eventually the business collapses. The Thompson brothers sweep in to save the company at pennies on the dollar. And the original owners? Destroyed. Professionally and personally. Rachel's voice softened slightly. Mr. Miller, what they did to you. It's their standard operation. They target strong, successful builders who trust their families completely. The betrayal isn't just about money. It's about breaking the men who built something from nothing. Jonathan's laugh was devoid of warmth. They picked the wrong man to break. He spent the next hour reviewing every detail of Rachel's investigation. The evidence was overwhelming. Text messages, financial records, surveillance photos, testimony from former victims. a decade-long operation designed to systematically destroy successful construction companies through intimate betrayal. What's our next move? Michael asked as they prepared to leave. Jonathan straightened his tie, every movement controlled and precise. Now we remind them why Miller Construction's reputation was built on more than just quality work. It was built on my absolute refusal to accept betrayal. Rachel watched him leave, then turned to Michael. Should we be worried about what he's planning? Michael shook his head. No, we should be worried about them. They thought they were destroying Jonathan Miller. Instead, they've freed him from every restraint that ever held him back. The door closed behind them, leaving Rachel alone with her evidence of a conspiracy that had destroyed dozens of families. But as she began preparing the federal case files, she couldn't help wondering if the Thompson family truly understood what they'd unleashed by betraying Boston's most unforgiving builder. The conference room at Boston PD's Financial Crimes Unit hummed with activity. Jonathan Miller stood at the head of the table, commanding attention just as he did on his construction sites. Around him sat the team he'd assembled: Michael Foster, Rachel Torres, Mark Wilson, and Linda Martinez. Everything's in place, Michael announced, spreading files across the table. We've documented every illegal action, every forged document, every stolen bid. The federal prosecutors are ready to move. Rachel Torres pulled up financial records on the wall screen. The money trails are ironclad. We've traced payments from Apex through 7 different shell companies. Each one leads back to the Thompsons. Mark. Jonathan turned to his bank manager. All the fraudulent loans have been flagged, Mark confirmed, adjusting his glasses. We've got proof of forgery on 16 different documents. The Banking Commission is already investigating. Linda stepped forward with her own stack of papers. These came in this morning. 3 former Apex employees willing to testify. They've provided emails, text messages, internal memos, everything showing how the scheme worked. Jonathan examined each piece of evidence methodically. Other victims? For other construction company owners have come forward, Rachel reported. All with similar stories. Sandra Thompson organized charity events, Heather made the introductions, and Ryan swooped in for the kill. The pattern goes back at least 5 years, but none of them fought back, Michael added. They were too ashamed, too broken. You're the first one who's turned the tables. Jonathan's laugh held no humor, because they didn't have 20 years of rage to fuel them. What about Ashley's college admission? Linda pulled out another document. Boston University's internal review is complete. They've confirmed the $2 million donation from Ryan Thompson came with explicit pressure about Ashley's admission. The dean of admissions has already resigned. Good. Jonathan checked his watch. The graduation party starts in 3 hours. Everyone knows their roles? Michael nodded. Federal agents will be in position, disguised as catering staff. Local PD has the perimeter secured. Once you make your move, we'll lock down the entire venue. Rachel? I'll be monitoring the Thompson brothers, she confirmed. The moment they try to access their accounts or contact their lawyers, we'll know. Mark. Ready to freeze every associated account the second you give the signal. Jonathan turned to Linda last. And you've invited all the right guests? Every major developer and contractor in Boston, she confirmed. Plus key clients, bankers, and real estate agents. Your entire professional network will witness their downfall. Perfect. Jonathan straightened his tie. By midnight, I want the Thompson empire in ashes, my wife in handcuffs, and my supposed daughter's future destroyed as thoroughly as they tried to destroy mine. John. Michael stepped closer, lowering his voice. Are you sure about this? Doing it so publicly? Jonathan's eyes hardened. They didn't just steal from me, Mike. They tried to break me, made my own daughter spy on me, turned my wife into their weapon. Tonight, everyone learns what happens when you betray Jonathan Miller. The media will be all over this, Rachel warned. A scandal this big, involving prominent families. Let them come, Jonathan cut her off. I want every builder in New England to see what happens to people who think they can destroy a man through his family. He moved to the window, staring out at the city he'd helped build. Behind him, his team continued preparing, their movements precise and coordinated. They'd spent weeks planning this moment, gathering evidence, positioning pieces. Now it was time for the trap to spring. Linda, he called without turning around. Send the final guest list to Michael's team. I want background checks on everyone. If Ryan or Sandra try to plant any surprises, I want to know. Already done, boss. And I've hired additional security for the venue. Ex-military. The catering staff? All vetted, Michael assured him. Real federal agents, selected for their experience in high-stakes operations. They'll be wired and ready. Jonathan nodded, satisfied. He'd built his empire through attention to detail, and he'd destroy his enemies the same way. No loose ends, no escape routes, no mercy. Rachel, walk me through the financial evidence one more time. I want to be able to quote exact numbers when I confront them. For the next hour, they refined every detail of the plan. Jonathan absorbed each piece of information, committing amounts and dates to memory. He would only get one chance to destroy them publicly, and it had to be perfect. What about Ashley's trust fund? Linda asked. The one Ryan set up? Frozen as of this morning, Mark reported, along with all associated accounts. The moment Mr. Miller gives the word, we'll initiate a full fraud investigation. She wanted their money? Jonathan's voice carried deadly calm. Let her learn what it means to bet on the wrong father. As the meeting concluded, Michael held Jonathan back. One last thing. Heather's been calling my wife, asking questions. She suspects something's wrong. Good. Jonathan smiled coldly. Let her squirm. By tonight, suspicion will be the least of her worries. He gathered his evidence, the DNA test, the forged documents, the surveillance photos, and placed them in a leather briefcase. Each piece represented a nail in the coffin of those who'd betrayed him. Everything's ready, Linda announced from the doorway. The venue is being swept for surveillance devices. Security is in place. Guests will start arriving at 7. Jonathan checked his watch again. 2 hours until he detonated the bomb that would destroy the Thompson Empire and everyone who'd helped build it. Then let's go get ready for a party. His smile would have made a shark back away. I believe I have a graduation speech to deliver. The grand ballroom of the Boston Harbor Hotel buzzed with Boston's construction elite. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above tables draped in white linen, each setting perfect, each arrangement meticulous. Linda had orchestrated every detail to create the illusion of a proud father celebrating his daughter's achievement. Heather worked the room like the expert socialite she become, her designer dress and flawless makeup masking any anxiety she might feel. Ashley stood near the entrance, accepting congratulations from guests, her practiced smile never wavering. Jonathan watched them both from across the room, noting how they kept glancing at their phones, checking for messages. They knew something was wrong but couldn't quite identify the threat. Ryan and Sandra Thompson arrived fashionably late, their entrance carefully calculated. Ryan immediately moved to congratulate Ashley, his hand lingering too long on her shoulder. Sandra drifted toward the bar, phone already in hand. Everything's in position, Michael murmured, disguised as a security guard. Federal agents are at every exit. Local PD has the perimeter secured. Just give the signal. Jonathan nodded almost imperceptibly, then moved toward the center of the room. Linda clinked a glass, drawing everyone's attention. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced. Mr. Miller would like to say a few words about our graduate. The room quieted as Jonathan took his position. He surveyed the crowd, contractors who'd known him for decades, bankers who'd funded his projects, rivals who'd competed fairly and unfairly. All would witness what happened to those who crossed him. Many of you have known Ashley since she was a child, he began, his voice carrying to every corner. Watched her grow up, shared in her achievements. Tonight, we celebrate her acceptance to Boston University's construction management program. Approving murmurs rippled through the crowd. Ashley beamed, while Heather touched her daughter's shoulder possessively. It's traditional at times like these to talk about legacy, Jonathan continued. About passing on our values, our traditions, our blood to the next generation. Something in his tone made Heather stiffen. Ryan Thompson shifted slightly, hand moving toward his phone. But what happens when that legacy is built on lies? Jonathan reached into his briefcase. When every achievement is tainted by betrayal? The room grew deadly quiet. Even the undercover agents held their breath. "You're a bastard child," he announced calmly, placing the DNA results on the table. "And you don't need to call me Dad anymore because I've removed you from my inheritance." Ashley's face drained of color. Heather lunged for the papers, but two waiters smoothly blocked her path. In fact, Jonathan continued, laying out document after document. "You never had any right to my name at all. Your real father is right here, Ryan Thompson, who paid for your college admission with stolen money." Ryan started toward the exit but found his path blocked by Michael and two federal agents who'd shed their catering disguises. "What is this?" Sandra Thompson demanded, her social mask cracking. "This, Mrs. Thompson, is what justice looks like." Jonathan's voice carried throughout the stunned room. "Your husband didn't just steal my wife. He and your whole family orchestrated a scheme to destroy honest builders through seduction and fraud." More agents appeared, surrounding the key players. Linda began distributing copies of evidence to the assembled guests: bank records, forged documents, surveillance photos. "Mom?" Ashley's voice quavered as she stared at the DNA results. "What did you do?" "What I had to do," Heather spat, dropping all pretense. "To escape this pathetic excuse for a man and his obsession with honest work." "Honest work?" Jonathan laughed coldly. "Let's talk about work. Like the work our daughter did, stealing data from my company. Or your work, trading inside information at Sandra's charity events." The Thompson brothers tried to push past the agents. "You have no proof." "We have everything." Michael stepped forward, badge displayed. "Boston PD, working with federal authorities. You're all under arrest for fraud, corporate espionage, and racketeering." Ashley collapsed, tears streaking her expensive makeup. "Daddy, please." "I'm not your daddy," Jonathan cut her off. "Ryan Thompson is. And he bought your college admission with money stolen from honest businessmen. I wonder how Boston University will feel about that." The next few minutes dissolved into controlled chaos. Federal agents produced warrants. Local police secured evidence. The Thompson brothers were led away in handcuffs, their protests ignored. Sandra's phone was confiscated as she demanded to call her lawyer. Heather remained defiant to the end. "You think this makes you strong? Destroying your own family?" "You destroyed this family," Jonathan replied evenly. "I'm just making sure everyone knows exactly who and what you are." As she was led away, Ashley made one last attempt. "Please, I can explain everything." "Save it for your testimony," Jonathan cut her off. "I'm sure the federal prosecutors will be very interested in how long you've been helping steal corporate secrets." The guests stood frozen, witnesses to the destruction of one of Boston's most prominent families. Jonathan turned to address them directly. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for disrupting the evening, but I believe we all deserve to know the truth about who we're doing business with. The open bar will remain available while you give your statements to the authorities." The aftermath unfolded with the same precision as one of Jonathan's construction projects. Each phase carefully planned, each consequence meticulously executed. 1 month after the graduation party, Jonathan sat in his office reviewing the damage reports. Linda had compiled them into a comprehensive document. Heather Miller, Ryan Thompson, and Daniel Thompson face federal charges for fraud and racketeering. All real estate and contractor licenses revoked pending investigation. Sandra Thompson's charity organization under federal audit. Multiple victims coming forward daily. He initialed each page, satisfaction coursing through him as he read the details. The Thompson brothers' empire was being dismantled piece by piece. Their projects seized, their assets frozen, their reputation destroyed beyond repair. Michael knocked once before entering. "Just got word from the DA's office. Heather's lawyers are pushing for a plea deal." "No deals." Jonathan didn't look up from the reports. "She testifies against everyone, or she takes the maximum sentence." "She's claiming coercion," says Ryan Thompson threatened her. "The offshore accounts in her name suggest otherwise." Jonathan finally met his friend's eyes. "Let her rot." "And Ashley?" "Boston University rescinded her admission this morning. The dean called personally to apologize for not catching the fraudulent donation sooner." Jonathan's smile held no warmth. "Seems they're very concerned about their reputation." Linda entered with more updates. The Banking Commission's investigation is expanding. They've identified 12 other construction companies targeted by the Thompson operation. Mark Wilson is coordinating with federal investigators. Good. Make sure every victim knows they can pursue civil charges as well. I want the Thompsons buried so deep they'll never see daylight. Rachel Torres called. Linda continued. She and I have been discussing starting a consultation firm, helping small businesses protect themselves from similar schemes. Jonathan nodded approvingly. Use Miller Construction as your first case study. Show them exactly how the poison spreads and how to stop it. The weeks turned into months. Jonathan threw himself into rebuilding, not just his company's projects but its reputation. Every contract completed ahead of schedule, every building exceeding specifications. He worked alongside his crews, proving that honest labor still meant something in Boston. Heather's sentencing hearing approached, but he didn't attend. He was too busy breaking ground on his largest project yet, a community center in his old South Boston neighborhood. The same streets where he and Michael had grown up, now being transformed by honest work and clean money. Mr. Miller? A young intern approached nervously one day. There's a letter from Ashley. She's been trying to reach you. Jonathan took the envelope, noted the prison return address where she awaited trial, and dropped it unopened into his shredder. Any other messages from former family members get the same treatment, he instructed. I'm not interested in tears or explanations. The intern nodded quickly and fled. Jonathan's reputation for unforgiving strength had only grown since the scandal broke. His crews worked harder than ever, knowing their boss demanded absolute loyalty and rewarded it well. 1 year to the day after the graduation party confrontation, Jonathan stood atop his newest project, surveying the city he'd helped build. Below him, the community center rose from its foundation, each beam and girder a testament to honest work and true craftsmanship. Michael joined him, both men comfortable in the construction site environment. Just heard from the FBI. Sandra Thompson rolled on everyone, gave them names of victims going back 10 years. And the money? Recovery teams are tracking every dollar. The legitimate builders will get restitution. Your testimony helped break it all open. Jonathan nodded, satisfied. The DNA test results remained in his office safe, not as a reminder of betrayal, but as proof that the truth, however painful, was always worth uncovering. You never answered their letters, Michael observed. Heather, Ashley, any of them? Nothing to say. Jonathan checked the welds on a nearby beam. They made their choices. Now they live with them. As they descended to the ground level, Jonathan paused to instruct his foreman about a minor adjustment. The man jumped to comply. Everyone knew Jonathan Miller accepted nothing less than perfection. The community center will open on schedule, he told Michael. A year from today. I want it to stand as a reminder that honest work outlasts any scheme or shortcut. And the scholarship program you're setting up? Jonathan's smile held real warmth for the first time in a year. For honest students who earn their way. No donations, no influence, just merit and hard work. They walked toward their vehicles, both men satisfied with how justice had played out. The construction noise behind them drowned out thoughts of Heather's upcoming sentencing or Ashley's tearful attempts at reconciliation. Jonathan had built his new life on stronger foundations than before. Honest work, loyal friends, and the knowledge that justice, while slow, was ultimately served. In the end, the man who'd started with a single truck had proven stronger than all the lies and schemes meant to destroy him. Another inspection tomorrow? Michael asked as they reached their cars. Always, Jonathan replied. Building things right takes constant attention, and I've got a lot more building to do. He drove away from the site, leaving behind the rubble of his old life and the rising framework of his new one. The betrayers were gone, justice was served, and Jonathan Miller remained unbroken, unbowed, and unforgiving. Epilogue. 5 years later. The Boston Globe's business section carried the headline, Miller Construction named Developer of the Year. Jonathan Miller scanned the article in his expanded office suite, now occupying the entire top floor of the Miller Construction headquarters building. At 50, his presence commanded even more respect than before, success having added an extra layer of authority to his bearing. Another award ceremony to attend, Linda Martinez noted, entering with the day's schedules. Now CEO of Shield Consulting, the firm she'd founded with Rachel Torres, she still made time to keep tabs on her former boss's empire. "How's business?" Jonathan asked, setting aside the paper. "Booming. Rachel's working with 3 more construction companies that almost fell victim to similar schemes. Your case study is required reading for every new client." Linda paused. "Speaking of which, have you heard the news about Heather?" Jonathan's expression remained impassive. Denied parole again? Third time. The board wasn't impressed by her rehabilitation, especially after what happened with her last appeal. The incident had made headlines in its own right. Heather Miller, former socialite and convicted fraudster, had attempted to win sympathy by claiming abuse and coercion. Her plan backfired spectacularly when Rachel Torres produced recordings of her bragging about the scheme to other inmates. 5 years into a 15-year sentence, Linda continued, "The federal prosecutors say she'll serve every day of it, especially after that stunt. And Ryan Thompson? Still in maximum security. The additional victims that came forward after your case added 30 years to his sentence. Daniel turned state's evidence against him last month, trying to reduce his own time." Linda allowed herself a small smile. "The Thompson brothers aren't so brotherly anymore." Jonathan nodded, satisfaction evident in his posture. The Thompson empire had crumbled completely. Every project seized, every asset liquidated to pay restitution to their victims. The brothers who'd once ruled Boston's construction scene now shared nothing but prison food and mutual recrimination. "Sandra Thompson made the society pages again," Linda added. "Spotted working as a shopping mall sales clerk in Nebraska. Quite a fall from charity galas and social engineering. And Ashley?" Linda's expression turned serious. "Released from minimum security last year after serving 3 years. She's working as a waitress in Chicago under her mother's maiden name. The trust fund Ryan set up was seized. Every penny went to restitution. She tried contacting you again last month." "The policy hasn't changed," Jonathan cut her off. "No contact, no exceptions." The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Miller? Michael Foster is here." Jonathan's expression warmed slightly. Michael entered, now wearing the bars of a police captain. His work breaking the Thompson case had accelerated his career, though he still made time for their weekly dinners. "Just came from a parole hearing," Michael announced, settling into a chair. "Remember James Wilson, one of the builders they destroyed before targeting you? He finally got justice. His testimony kept Heather behind bars where she belongs." "How many victims total now?" Jonathan asked. 37 confirmed cases across New England. The FBI thinks there might be more." Michael leaned forward. "But that's not why I'm here. We got an interesting tip from one of Ryan's former associates. Seems they had operations in other states. And Rachel's already investigating. 3 similar rings identified in New York, Chicago, and Miami. Different players, same playbook. Sandra Thompson taught them well." Jonathan stood, moving to the window that overlooked his latest project, a 20-story tower rising from the heart of Boston's financial district. Below, crews worked with precision, every movement reflecting the standards he'd built his reputation on. "Pass the information to Linda and Rachel," he instructed. "Let Shield Consulting handle it. I'm done with their world." Speaking of done, Michael shifted topics. "Heard anything from the lawyers?" "The divorce was final years ago," Jonathan replied. "The marriage annulment came through last month. Legally, Heather Miller never existed. The annulment had been a final twist of the knife, erasing even the memory of their marriage from official records. Jonathan had spared no expense making sure every trace of his connection to Heather and Ashley was severed. "Your new foundation is making headlines," Linda mentioned, changing the subject. "The Miller Integrity Scholarship has already put 20 students through construction management programs." Legitimate students. This brought a genuine smile to Jonathan's face. The foundation, funded by his share of the restitution money, supported young people who showed real talent and ethical character. Each recipient was carefully vetted, their backgrounds thoroughly investigated. No shortcuts, no influence peddling, just merit and hard work. A knock at the door introduced Rachel Torres, tablet in hand. "Sorry to interrupt, but you'll want to see this. Just got records from the Miami investigation." She pulled up documents on the conference screen. Bank statements, surveillance photos, transcripts, all showing how Sandra Thompson's methodology had spread like a virus through the construction industry. They targeted family-owned businesses, Rachel explained, used the same mix of seduction, corporate espionage, and financial fraud. But here's the interesting part. Some of these cases go back 20 years. Before the Thompsons? Michael asked. Sandra learned from someone else. We're tracking the connections now. Rachel turned to Jonathan. Your case broke it open. Without you fighting back, none of this would have come to light. Jonathan absorbed this information with characteristic focus. Work with the FBI. I want every one of these operations shut down. Use whatever resources you need. Already coordinating with them. Shield Consulting's reputation opens a lot of doors these days. Rachel smiled grimly. Turns out there's a big market for protecting honest businesses from predators. The meeting continued, discussing developments and strategies. Jonathan listened, occasionally offering guidance, but mainly letting his team handle the details. He built something new from the ashes of betrayal, not just a construction empire, but a network dedicated to protecting others from similar schemes. Later that evening, after the others had left, Jonathan reviewed the latest letters from prison. Heather's desperate pleas for forgiveness. Ashley's tearful attempts at explanation. Ryan Thompson's threats and accusations. All unopened. All marked "Return to Sender." The DNA test results remained in his office safe, but he rarely looked at them anymore. They'd served their purpose, shattering the perfect lie that had been his family. Now they were just paper, meaningless compared to the truth he'd built his new life upon. His phone buzzed, a message from the contractor on the community center project. The building he'd erected in his old neighborhood had become a blueprint for similar projects across the city. Local kids learned trades there, honest work leading to real opportunities. Tomorrow would bring more projects, more challenges, more opportunities to build. Jonathan Miller had emerged from betrayal stronger than ever, his reputation for uncompromising integrity drawing clients and allies who valued truth over convenient lies. The sun set over Boston, painting the skyline he'd helped create in golden light. In her prison cell, Heather Miller watched another day end through steel bars. In a Chicago diner, Ashley Thompson Reed served coffee to strangers who'd never know her past. In maximum security, Ryan Thompson plotted appeals that would never succeed. And in Nebraska, Sandra Thompson folded sweaters and dreamed of lost glory. But in his office atop the Miller Construction Building, Jonathan Miller planned tomorrow's victories. He'd learned the hardest lesson in business and life. Trust, once broken, could never be repaired. But on that broken foundation, he'd built something unshakable. A legacy of strength, integrity, and unflinching justice. The intercom buzzed one final time. Mr. Miller? Your dinner reservation at O'Malley's is in 30 minutes. Captain Foster is already there. Jonathan gathered his coat. Some traditions remained sacred. Weekly dinners with his best friend, the man who'd helped him expose the truth and survive its revelation. They'd come a long way from throwing rocks at trains in South Boston. As he rode the elevator down, Jonathan reflected on the past 5 years. He'd lost a false family but gained a real legacy. The Miller name now stood for something more than just construction excellence. It represented the triumph of truth over lies, strength over betrayal, justice over deception. The doors opened to the lobby where Michael waited. Ready for dinner? Jonathan nodded, stepping into the evening air. Behind him rose the buildings he'd created. Before him stretched the future he'd chosen. He'd learned that some men broke when betrayed, while others emerged stronger. He'd chosen strength, and that choice had made all the difference. Let's go, he said simply. Tomorrow's going to be a busy day. And it would be another day of building, another day of protecting honest work from dishonest schemes, another day of showing the world that Jonathan Miller had not only survived betrayal but had turned it into the foundation of his greatest triumph. The perfect lie had failed. The perfect truth had prevailed. And in the end, that was all that mattered. This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your time. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe to this channel. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.